All right, let's get our Facebook groups in here before it's officially time to start the show. I think I clicked everybody here. Hopefully, we'll get that spinning wheel going there. All righty, 1 and 2. There we go. All right. Welcome in, welcome in. It is Monday morning, a mournful Monday once again as the Broncos are looking up from the cellar, up at the new dynasty in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs, and a lot of people calling him already the greatest of all time. I'm saying pump the brakes there because how much Brady won, but top 3 for sure. Broncos, congrats, Chiefs. God, man, I don't know. Good morning. I guess morning. I'm going to toss out the good there. Morning to you, Scott. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Like I said, last week I quit. I felt like top to bottom, the San Francisco 49ers were probably the better team, but I'm not betting against Patrick Mahomes anymore, not against the Chiefs. And you see that it's not the trust factor I'm thinking, but the belief, I guess, is what I'm looking for. The belief factor on a team that has been there and done that. And the doubt that creeps in and just how big the mental aspect of this game is. We talk about culture in the Denver Broncos a lot, and how when I first started covering this team 3 years ago, that team had quit. And I never saw that with the Denver Broncos this past year. Even when they were off to a 1-5 start, come back against that Bears team. And you saw that this team believed that they fought the Kansas City Chiefs hard. I think that was the one that dropped them to 1-5. They kept fighting. That is a culture that takes a little time. And I think we underestimated that a little bit in year one of the Sean Payton era with the Denver Broncos, Nick.
Yeah, it's congrats again to the Kansas City Chiefs. No doubt a dynasty now. And I want to maybe take a step back here, Scott. And again, Patrick Mahomes, I'm going to just call him this point the boogeyman. That's what he is. I don't know if again, we're talking horror movies today because it was a horror show yesterday for Broncos country, Scott. But it makes me think of Halloween, where they're scaring the little kid. He's gonna get you. He's gonna get you. It's Mahomes, man. He's just, you knock him down, he keeps coming. But as far as the best team, I mean, can we actually confidently say that the 40? I mean, obviously the Chiefs won, but I think if you put them head to head, who had the better defense?
No. I agree. I'm saying just top to bottom when you're looking at weapons and kind of like matching rosters and stuff. Yeah. You look at you switch quarterbacks on that team, and it's a 3 touchdown game.
I think the difference is
nothing against Brock Purdy.
No.
I think I'm not saying the Kansas City Chiefs didn't earn it. I think Kansas City Chiefs. I picked the Kansas City Chiefs because I think the belief elevates them. But from a weapon standpoint and from and top to bottom on talent, I think San Francisco was probably on a longer timeline. If it wasn't a playoff and a one and done thing, if you're playing 30 games like baseball, and who has a better record? I think San Francisco probably has a better record at the end of the year. But right now, and with the belief this team has and the experience and with the quarterback, Kansas City is the team that I picked to win, despite the fact that I think San Francisco may be, again, top to bottom. I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here. I know that. But again, I'm trying to say Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, that defense, elevate them. They're playing better than the sum of their parts because of their greatness.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think I was trying to walk the line myself, not to trip you up or anything, Scott, but if I was taking either of those defenses right now, I would take the Chiefs defense.
Absolutely.
The Chiefs have a better defense. And we were texting about it, but special teams, man. Harrison Butker had an unbelievable season. The punting game, what changed the game was that muff punt. I think the Chiefs almost immediately scored a touchdown off of it. It might have been one play.
It was the very next play. Missed extra point.
Missed extra
field
point.
Goal.
I mean, so I think I agree with you because the difference in the offensive personnel, but that 49ers offensive line is not great. But that was an unbelievable Chiefs defense and special teams. I would argue top 3 in the NFL if you combine those two together. So again, Patrick Mahomes is the boogeyman, but this was a unbelievable job by Brett Veach, Steve Spagnuolo, and I think Mahomes is obviously the straw that stirs the drink there, but that Tyreek Hill trade where you get 2 first-round picks and you end up taking the likes of Trent McDuffie, All-Pro, George Karlaftis, who I somehow got talking. I was like, top 10 pick, George Karlaftis. He falls to like 26, 27, and he looks like a top 10 pick there, Scott. Best cornerback duo in
Trust
football.
Yourself. Don't, again, you start looking, how do these teams at the back end the Ravens, the Chiefs, how do they constantly get these guys at the back end? Because think of the Moneyball, the Moneyball thing. They fell for it because, oh, his arms are a little too short or something like that. It's like, yeah, but they're grabbing either the freakiest athlete or the best player, like, the most production, the guys that get it done, who have a red flag for one reason or another. Oh, he's 6'2.5" instead of 6'3". His arms are 32 and a quarter. We really want him to be 33. All right, does he get it done or not? And they keep getting those guys, or they take a chance on, Adafa Owe, who is just he's a freak, but they're getting all of these butt guys and turning them into, a cohesive unit.
But guys, they're just like me. Now, Michael Ronquillo coming in. Good morning, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos. Good to see you, Michael. Appreciate you coming in and supporting the show on this morningful Monday morning. We still got coffee, though, and we're still talking ball, of course. Going to be a little shorter show today. Got to get to a doctor's appointment, so alarm's going to go off here and at 7:10 my time Pacific. So we got Aaron Wagner coming in saying that Broncos constantly signing retreads and chasing past prime quarterbacks isn't going to help them with this. But mortgaging the future on the wrong quarterback would also be devastating. Find the quarterback at all costs. Easier said than done. I know. I was like on Twitter yesterday. So I was like, just imagine how good this Broncos team would be with Patrick Mahomes. Okay. Thank you. If we had a top 3 quarterback of all time, of course. Yeah, this would be a different Broncos team. But without that guy, you're far away. And far away on the defense, too. I mean, I know it's a ways off, Scott. I don't know how the contracts or anything like this would work. But my big brain desperation last night was like, okay, maybe Vance Joseph isn't that good this year. Broncos are the richest owners in football. Can we buy out Steve Spagnuolo to get him away from Kansas City? I know he's under contract there, but I think you could probably beat the Hunts out there in Kansas City and bring in, I mean, is there a better value than having the former guy who's like, he's not really a good head coach, not going to jump there again, but an unbelievable defensive coordinator? You have the stability there year after year. I mean, he's been unbelievable. Probably the most unheralded person for this Chiefs dynasty run has got to be Steve Spagnuolo, because he's not having these interviews. He's not going out there. They're not pulling from his staff. He's just there constantly and building up incredible defenses that peak come January. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, he's the mad scientist type that, doesn't want to deal with all of the ins and outs of being a head coach, or just didn't do it very well.
The likable mad scientist for the Vic Fangio people out there. Sorry, go ahead. But
yeah, you see that especially on defense, where they just want to coach ball, and you get a guy that's pretty easy to work for in Andy Reid, and you get a good situation. It's a good spot for him.
Yeah. It's rough. Jesse Fraley coming in and says 3 rings and he's only 28. I'd like to say good morning all, but we know it isn't. Fortunately, time comes for everyone eventually, right? The heat death of the universe is inevitable. And eventually Patrick Mahomes will retire. We're talking a decade from now. But there's going to be turnover since then. The Chiefs are going to
the coffee's kicking in on Nick, too.
Speeding up. You're going to have some, I think it's more the 7-10 deadline. But you're going to have the Chiefs making some hard decisions this offseason. Are they going to be able to bring back Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed? I don't know. How much longer do you have for Travis Kelce / Andy Reid? I mean, there's going to be turnover here. So while Mahomes is going to be a constant there for the next 10 years, it's not going to be this iteration. And one thing I've said on here, Scott, quarterbacks let you knock on the door many times, and the Chiefs are going to continue to knock on the door because of that. But defenses are very volatile year to year just because it's so depth and health dependent. Like everybody's like, oh, we just need to rebuild the Broncos 2015 defense. Okay. You just need an all-time defense every year, and then the offense can be bad. Good luck. God bless you. That's that if it was that easy. But that's one thing that I have at least coming out of this is that was an unbelievable Chiefs defense. It's going to be dismantled some this season, and they're not going to have that influx of draft picks that they had where they absolutely hit on them in that Tyreek Hill trade. So still, they obviously should be the favorites. They're the boogeyman. But it's going to be hard to three-peat, no doubt, next season.
They're the reason, it's not the teams I grew up with, but I grew up with teams like this that you like trading back. You like acquiring players because they hit on a lot of theirs. And again, part of it's a system, part of it's the continuity. We preach that, we have that preached to us a lot, the continuity and staff. And when you've had 3 head coaches in 3 years, it's tough to have that type of continuity. And I wonder, if Sean Payton's here for the long haul, if they struggle, that's will he have the patience? I don't know. I don't know. That's my biggest concern with the Denver Broncos moving forward. I've said before is Sean Payton, the general manager. Mm-hmm. That's my biggest concern. What's going to hold this team back is Sean Payton personnel. I don't like that dynamic when the head coach is basically the general manager as well. So that's something that what can doom this Denver Broncos team with Sean Payton, who is an excellent coach, is personnel.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I loved seeing Sean Payton, the Radio Road to the Super Bowl stuff, but man, he's such a natural, and he kind of pulling that off. I know he loves the coaching aspect too. That's why I jumped back to it, but I wonder if things get hard, if there is that pull back to the media side of things, because he's good at it. A lot of hellos in here. Michael Evans saying, wow, okay. I don't know if it's because of the fatalistic title that we have today, but appreciate you. Hope you're doing well. Maurice says, give us Wilson Surtain in a second. You can have the 8th overall pick. I think
Maurice is coming over from the Falcons podcast, and
yes.
you don't have to trade for Wilson. You can just wait on him, and that's something here. As Sherry's saying, why is Payton now saying the door is open for Wilson? Is he trying to shush the media and rumors, or is it true? I think it's trying to also stoke a little bit of and appreciate the stars. I see you coming in here at the same time over on Facebook. Says happy Monday, man. What a tough morning. I think, they've left it open as a restructure. Part of it is they screwed themselves by showing their hand, and now they can't make a move with Russell Wilson. You can't trade him. If I'm interested in Russell Wilson and I know Russell Wilson's available, why would I trade for him? You can't keep him. I've likened this to the Derek Carr situation with the Raiders a lot. People are like, oh, well, they trade for Derek Carr. There's no need to trade for Derek Carr. They can't keep him. They're going to cut him, sit back and wait and sign him as a free agent. But that's just trying to keep your options as open as possible. The problem is they slam the door on it, Sherry.
Yeah. And Miranda comes in and says, well, it looks like a cool mountain picture there. I'm really missing the mountains these days, Scott. So appreciate seeing that. But she says, and why would Andy Reid retire? Andy Reid is by far the oldest head coach in the NFL now that Pete Carroll and Belichick are out of the league. He is 65 years old, going to be 66 here come March. The next oldest is John Harbaugh at 61. So he's about 5 years older than the next oldest head coach in the entire NFL. And Andy Reid has been on the mountaintop and been sitting there for a bit now. So I think that, he could come back, no doubt, but nobody would fault him at all if he walked away this offseason. There's more to life than football, right? So he's been at the pinnacle for a bit. And again, he could be back, but we're definitely on Andy Reid. Will he be back? Will he retire? Watch at this point, especially, just considering the success he's had. It's good to go out on top.
And Jeremy says, what if multiple teams want Wilson? He's not terrible and will be vet minimum cheap. Well, that's two different things to me. If multiple teams want him, you might have a trade thing, but he's got a no trade clause. So he's still in charge of where he's choosing. And if you were to trade him, the Broncos would still have to pick up all of the money. So again, I'm just going to kick back and I'm going to talk to his representatives and I'm say, okay, we'll wait. This is where we want. Before he is cut, he will probably know where he's going. There's his representatives are having those conversations now. And Nick, my question is it just this year where the money goes towards the dead cap, or would it be 2025 as well?
I think it's just this season.
Okay, that's what I thought too. So you sign you can sign a 2-year deal. I could sign him to a 2-year, $41 million contract and give him $1 million in year 1 and 40 in year 2 with 20 guaranteed and, something like that. So again, if Russell holds all the cards and there's no reason, I saw people say stuff like, they're blaming Russell. If Wilson was a winner, if he wanted to do this, like all the great quarterbacks, he would have restructured his contract. The Broncos, you restructure your contract when either one, that's the only way you can stay on the team, you're about to be cut, or two, you want to be there longer, or three, what's my third one? The point is they don't want him. Why am I going to restructure my contract so you can cut me anyway? Unless it's just going to kick more money down the line and then you've got a dead cap for longer. You don't want me. Why would I do you a favor and take less money Why would I restructure my contract for you to cut me? That doesn't make any sense. You don't want me here. Pay me, cut me, and let's move on.
Yeah. It is pretty inevitable or unlikely that Broncos trade Russell Wilson. I also don't think you get the vet min benefit unless he is waived. So teams are interested in him because they know he's going to be on the market, because they know they don't have to pay anything for him. And as far as the rumors that Russell Wilson might be back, I think, Scott, it's the same exact deal that you have had when the Broncos approached him after that first or that second Chiefs game, where they're like, listen, waive that injury guarantee, waive that 2025 stuff, and we'll have you back. I think that's still on the table. And I think Russell Wilson is probably looking around right now in the league. And I guess there's a possibility that he waives it. If I was his representative, I'd tell him, no way in hell do that. Take that money and run and be in a better, different situation next season. But I think that deal is still on the table. So as long as that deal's on the table and we have until, March, whatever it is, there'll still be a door open for Russell Wilson to be back in Denver next season. I just think that is extremely unlikely because why would he waive that money to a contract that both sides agreed to? That just doesn't happen
for a coach that doesn't want you. I mean, that's the way I see it. Peyton doesn't want Russell Wilson. If Russell Wilson, if Peyton was gone, then we could talk. Maybe there's a possibility. But the Peyton Russell Wilson thing it's done.
Yep, I'm with you on that. So continue to follow it. Carl kind of feeling a little fatalistic like me, saying we're screwed for years. The dead cap hit. Got to pull some rabbits out of their hat or trade Surtain in a bad spot. Yeah, they're going to have to start hitting on picks, and their picks from the last 2 draft cycles are going to have to start hitting and becoming plus starters. I mean, Uzurike, is he going to be back? Because Mathis, anything but a wasted pick. I know 4th round pick, but you don't have picks where you have to hit on those 4ths. Drew Sanders, can Marvin Mims be a functional wide receiver? I know that you have value with him being a returner, but God, he needs to be a freaking wide receiver at this point if you're going to be a trade-up valuable player. Can Riley Moss be a starter? I mean, you don't have those top 100 picks because you traded for Peyton, you traded up, you traded for Russell Wilson, but that's the position you put yourself in. You need to hit on those other picks because you don't have those top picks. So they're in a tough spot, but things can turn around. I think this Broncos team, I think Peyton has a vision and a culture. And one thing, how are you going to beat the Chiefs, Scott? Obviously, it's going to be pretty hard, and you're going to have to capture some down Chiefs seasons as they have some obvious rebuilds and things change over the next decade. But I think the formula is there, and it's one thing that kind of drove me nuts with the 49ers yesterday, specifically with the offense. I think you need to just beat the absolute you-know-what out of the Chiefs from a physical standpoint. I don't know what was going on. It was kind of giving me shades to, I won't cover your ears, Scott, but that Atlanta Super Bowl with Kyle Shanahan, where it's like you are dominating in the trenches right now. Your offensive line and the run game is taking it to the Chiefs. Why are we throwing it 8 times in a row here? I mean, I know they're stacking the box, but like you have an advantage right now. You are pushing them. Why are you getting away from that? I think that is probably the strategy I look to employ here. I know it's all about the pass game, but I'm using the pass for explosives. I'm using the run to body blow you. And I think that is probably the strategy for the Broncos, where I'm looking to just beat the absolute crap out of you. And Scott, I know it's kind of obviously counterfactual, but I would have loved to have seen what the Detroit Lions offensive line would have done yesterday. Now, the Detroit Lions defense, different story, but that offensive line, I think, would have made it a really interesting game because I think they could have dictated almost the entire flow of the game because their offensive line is that good.
Yeah, and there was a very famous quote that came out of that Super Bowl from Matt Ryan coming off the field at Kyle Shanahan: "Run the effing ball." That was in 2016. And Jay says, as much as I hear you, Scott, Sean would want Russ if Russ wasn't an issue of the offense and a one-trick pony. And Jeremy kind of says what I'm thinking. So if Russ wasn't Russ, then he'd want him. Okay, sure, yeah. It's not a personality thing. It's not because he was sleeping with his daughter or something. It's he doesn't see him as a fit. He doesn't think he can win the way he wants to with Russ and the contract that it's going to take. Let's get out from under this contract as soon as you can. And I see Marie saying, anybody that says the Broncos did Russ dirty, I disagree. I don't think this is about Russ not living up to expectations of what they paid for. That's not anybody's fault, really. If it's anybody's fault, it's George Payton's fault. It's not Russ's fault. It's not Sean Payton's fault. If it's not working, you move on. Now, divorces can be a little messy and feelings get hurt, but this is about Sean Payton, who is the head coach and general manager, saying, I can't get this team where I want it to be with this quarterback and this contract. We need to get out from it as soon as possible. End of. No big deal. But, like I said, divorces can be messy, but I don't blame either side for that. So you don't want him, you don't want him. I'm out. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, but I come away this game, maybe it's just a make me feel better coping kind of thing where it's like, okay, how am I going to beat the Chiefs? I am going to try to build a team that is going to physically bludgeon them to death. And that is on the defensive line and that is on the offensive line. And that's a kind of a slow build process, Scott, as well. That's going to take.
Who does that on the West Coast?
The Seahawks did it for a number of years.
Yeah, there you go. They won a Super Bowl out of it too, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, everybody talks of Legion of Boom. Legion of Boom doesn't Legion of Boom without the defensive line that they had there. It's that
Southeast/East versus West mentality. Where you've got the black and blue divisions in the AFC North and the NFC North, and then SEC football, in the trenches, and then the West Coast has always been Showtime. Since I was a kid, it's been Showtime. And then the 49ers and their flash and the West Coast offense. It's not down and dirty.
I think that the power run game and the physicality aspect and hitting Mahomes hard many times is the move. And it's going to be a little different without Travis Kelce there at some point. I was half expecting him to drop on a knee after yesterday's game. But Jesse comes in and says the Chiefs won the Super Bowl without a big name wide receiver nuts. I think.
Who's that sound like? Who's that remind you of? Who did I say this team reminded me of?
We have a full baton handing off from Brady to Mahomes. This was a special teams defense. Mahomes, there's not spending big on the outside the offensive line, not spending big on the offense and letting him manage the game to a Super Bowl. And it worked. And I know that a lot of the data. What was that?
An aura, that here we come mentality. Like, oh, you can't beat this guy. This was the Patriots of. This was the most Patriots-like win from the Kansas City Chiefs. Special teams, defense, quarterback.
Yeah,
and then that's not to take anything away. There's good players out there, and the offensive line, as well. But you can do it without elite skill position players if you've got 3 of the 4 other facets: special teams, defense, quarterback.
Yeah, and I see Jeremy coming in and say exactly, Nick, hit Mahomes every chance you get. I want Denver to take up that mentality and that bar that we almost started to see this season where people are starting to call them Dirty Denver. All right, bet. Let's live up to that. I'm not saying injure Mahomes. I don't believe, being outright dirty, but play to the echo of the window. And I want the Chiefs fans to hate playing Denver because Mahomes is going to get hit and we're going to be towing that line every game. I want them to come in being like, okay, we're better than Denver, but God, they're going to punch us in the mouth. And
even if you win, you're going to lose next week.
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly what I'm hoping for. Just that physical, grueling meat grinder of a team. So hopefully that is something the Broncos can do again. I think that is something that is going to take a little bit of time, given especially how soft the Broncos are on the defensive line. But I think you can do that on both sides of the ball. I think that is probably the only path forward for this team. I want the NFL fans, the Taylor Swift followers, whatever, to be like, oh my gosh, Denver is so mean. They hit Patrick Mahomes so many times. Mahomes is crying on the field. Like, I want to have the shots of him crying, looking at the refs. I got hit late. Well, too bad. I'll even take the 15-yard penalty from time to time if you make him feel your presence. So that, I think, and as Miranda said, thanks to David Wilder, said Peyton's a problem, put us in this position. We'll get back to that. But Miranda says, going to the next season as the villains. I think you have to embody that because you're not going to be the heroes anymore. You can't. We have the golden boy in the division. I think embrace the darkness, become the bully, and start punching in the mouth.
They'll have the most fans and the most haters. Who's America's team now? That was might be the Kansas City Chiefs. Nobody hates it. Dallas Cowboys have the the most popular team, but they also have the most haters because they're overexposed as part of that. And you wanted to come back to it with David Wilder. It's funny. When I read this as Payton Peyton the first time, no, George Payton is a problem. He put us in this position. Again, 3 fireable offenses last year in 2022. 3 of them. Nathaniel Hackett, the Russell Wilson trade, the Russell Wilson contract. All 3 of those were not franchise killers, but season killers for sure. Any one of those is good enough to cost a general manager his job. He had 3 of them all in one season. How do you dig out of this? You got to get a little lucky in the draft. And, talking about the dead cap hit from Russell Wilson isn't any worse than what his cap hit would have been the next 2 seasons. So you're going to have to get lucky in the draft on a cheap quarterback, on a cheap cost-controlled quarterback that can come in and play at a similar level. The problem is you were paying for a top 5 quarterback and didn't get him. So now we've got that money allocated and we still don't have a quarterback. That's the problem. You'd still be in the exact same situation as far as trying to add to the team if Russell Wilson was playing well or not. You just feel a lot better about your chances because you got a top 5 quarterback. So the cap hit and dead cap hit are basically neutral over the next 2 seasons. You just don't have the guy that you traded for, and you don't have those players that you gave away, the picks that you traded for, and you don't have the quarterback. So if you can get lucky and really hit on a quarterback in the draft who's cost controlled, you're right back to where you started. So it's not as bad as it seems. It really isn't.
Yeah.
The hard part is you got to hit on that. You got to hit on a quarterback in the draft that can play.
But the hard part of that is, Scott, is that there's been teams who have said that since their inception in the league.
I know.
I mean, it's
the way I try and think of this as the good sign, Nick, is you were 8-9, could have gone either way. You weren't as bad as 1-5. You weren't as good at 6-1. Those 2 big streaks. You're probably right around 500. Can this team improve? Yes. Now, I think we take Russell Wilson's season for granted a little bit. Russell didn't play all that bad last year. Are you going to be able to replicate 28-10?
I think so.
His touchdown. And if you can, then you didn't lose anything.
Yeah.
You're not losing anything. So you can improve. If you can replicate that, then you can get better next year from 8-9. I believe that.
I think the difference between quarterback 12 and quarterback 40 in the NFL is as small as we've ever seen in the history of the league. But I think that, you still have to have that top 8 perennial guy. But, outside of that, I think there is going to be a Baker Mayfield-esque quarterback where you're talking about bringing in somebody for super cheap and getting competent plus quarterback play for practically nothing. So I think I'd rather have that than pay top dollar for mediocrity. I think that you have enough people who can come in with the schemes that are working out today and how many wide receivers come in, plug and play, that there's not this huge drop off after 20. I think 15 to 40, not a big difference. So give me the cheaper guy where you're not committed long-term. So I really do think you could maybe still replicate the statistical output from Wilson this season. If not, then it's going to be for a fraction of the cost. I know he costs the same next season, but I'm thinking long-term flexibility.
Which is why they made the move.
Yep, exactly.
We're not paying $50 million to a guy that is a jag. I can get just a guy for $2 million. Let's get out from under this contract as soon as we possibly can. And that's why they're making the move, because they feel that they can plug in anybody. Now let's work on finding the dude. We're not going to go backwards if we lose Russell Wilson. And the dead cap hit is not as detrimental because that's what his cap hit would have been. That's what I keep trying to say. It's like, you're not having trouble signing free agents. You're not broke because you're cutting Russell Wilson. You're broke because of the Russell Wilson's contract initially and some of the stuff that you did anyway, which is why some of these deals were set up to restructure. Now we need to see what happens to Bowles, Simmons, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, all of those guys, to figure out if this is going to be a full-on rebuild, which I still don't think it will be, or if it's let's bring these guys back on restructured contracts, extensions. Let's get them some extensions, add some pieces, and let's take another step forward while we are trying to find our long-term guy.
Yep, I agree with you. And we're going to do a quick mock here. I know it's time for me to go, but we're going to start this one here. The Broncos picking 12.
Zoom in some.
Maybe, what was that?
Zoom in some. I can't see that.
I didn't hear you. Zoom in. All righty. There's my alarm. We stop it there. So we have the Broncos on the board here on the clock. You had Caleb Williams 1, Drake May 2, Jaden Daniels 3. There you go. Malik Neighbors 4. Cooper DeJean. They're going to have to fix that here. I love Cooper, but top 10, I don't know. Adunze, Marvin Harrison, Jerzon Newton, Olufshan or Nate Wiggins and Leatu Latu off the board. Now we're picking as the Broncos. We got Joe Alt, Brock Bowers, Talise Fuaga, Dallas Turner, Terry and Arnold. This is one of those ones, Scott, where I like 4 or 5 guys enough that I'm hoping to trade back 4 or 5 slots. If somebody, I have to get Joe Alt. All right, come up and get Joe Alt. If you need the Bengals specifically, like, hey, you need to come up. Let me trade back to 18. God bless you. I think with the way this board fell, I would be going with Joe Alt. Personally, I see Jeremy's in the quarterback or bust mentality. I appreciate that, Jeremy. That's the first question. Do I like any of these quarterbacks enough to take in them here? I think that it's certainly possible that Sean Payton could feel that way. We haven't even had a chance to talk too much about that yet. But for this one, I'm going to go with Joe Alt just because I think it's time to start rebuilding, refortifying the trenches and embracing the bully and the physicality aspect.
Hit the quarterback button.
Bo Nix, Michael Penix, JJ McCarthy.
They have JJ McCarthy at 52, so I'm going to cheat and take him in this. Well, you can't take him in the second. You don't have a second round pick.
Nope.
I would cheat and take him in the second. I'm probably going quarterback in this spot. If there's only 3 quarterbacks gone, I might take QB4.
Okay.
At 12.
And are you of the JJ McCarthy or Bo Nix opinion for quarterback?
I'd go JJ McCarthy.
All right.
That said, for Sean Payton, if he is impatient, the guy who is ready to play sooner is Bo Nix.
Yep. I agree with you. I wouldn't be shocked at all if JJ McCarthy does end up going top 10 in the end. And I think the team that I'm really in the watch for JJ McCarthy is the Minnesota Vikings, just because I think he'd be an unbelievable fit for the Kevin O'Connell offense. But McCarthy's a good processor, a good athlete with a above average arm. I'd give him a B+ level arm talent. Gary Palmer comes in and says, hi, Nick and Scott. I am not a George Payton apologist, but I think the contract thing was pushed on him by his boss. That is why he's still here. I'm of the belief that Russell Wilson with a no trade clause in Seattle is not agreeing to come to Denver without the understanding that a contract is going to be made beforehand. Obviously the timeline doesn't line up exactly with that, but it's really weird with the Broncos with the ownership transition there happening at the same time. So I don't think that he agrees to that trade without a good faith agreement that they will get a deal done. But yeah, it's 3 moves for George Payton. Really, it's the trade of Russell Wilson. It's the contract of Russell Wilson. Heck, what are the Broncos trying to do right now? It's that $37 million guaranteed injury guarantee for 2025 that's hurting them. That's a George Payton thing right there. It's not just the contract itself. It's the specifics of the contract. And then also the Nathaniel Hackett hiring as well. God, what a laughable hindsight.
And Gary, as a football, if these guys are coming in, it's my job as a football guy to kick and scream if I don't think this is the right thing to do. You're the owners. You kept me here. It's as an advisor, I would think that, and he's getting paid well to maybe take the hits on this, along with last year's, I negotiate the contracts with how the Russell Wilson thing, George Payton might be the whipping boy, and that's why he's still there. You might be onto something there. Appreciate you, Gary.
Do appreciate you so much, Gary, coming in here. Scott, I'm going to filter this for defensive line, edge rusher, cornerback, et cetera, et cetera. So here we have with the board here, we got Broncos picking at 76. Got Jalen McMillan here. Jarvis Brownlee had a good combine.
Brownlee was good at the Senior Bowl.
Excuse me. We have Chris Mahogany's thought pretty highly. The guys who stand out for me here, looking at this, I know who I'm going to push for, but Malachi Corley. I think Broncos looking for a wide receiver. I think he brings so much yak ability to the table that he interests me. Marshawn Kneeland, Scott, I think he's going to end up going top 60. I think the combination of size, twitch, and length makes him a very interesting player. I like McKinley Jackson a lot too if you're looking for a nose tackle. But the one for me in this class, on this spot, is Leonard Taylor, the third. I think that he is. Miami had a weird situation last season where they had some injuries and they forced the 300-pound 3-tech to almost play exclusively as a nose tackle and a one technique, taking on double teams. And I think it was malpractice by the Hurricanes. Maybe it was the best for the team, but it definitely was not the best for Leonard Taylor. I wouldn't be shocked at all, Scott, if we look back 5 years from now, if Taylor ends up the best interior defensive lineman in this class. I think he has the best get off of anybody in this class. I know he had the best pass rush win rate of any defensive lineman in this class from the 3 technique spot as well. And if you want to go and watch a game for Taylor, folks at home that interest you, I think that his game against Clemson was really good. I mean, his his get off isn't, top 10 Ed Oliver-esque. But as far as the pass rush ability, the penetration ability, I think he is one of the better ones in this class. So I'm looking to get after the quarterback. I'm looking to hit. I am thinking that Taylor is one that stands out for me. I'm not sure after the combine he's going to be this far down, but I think he was miscast. And because of that, didn't have the stats that you'd think for a guy like him. But I think he, as a 3 technique, 4-eye, I think he could be really good. So I think Leonard Taylor is my pick here.
How do you not put DL as a need for the Denver Broncos if you're PFF?
Because they have too many needs, but it should be, without a doubt. So that was it. I mean, we take JJ McCarthy there and then Leonard Taylor. I would be pretty excited about this one overall. You take a shot at a young quarterback. We get an F. I don't care what PFF has to say about that. And then a Leonard Taylor C for that one. Again, I think the get off there, he stays on his feet pretty well as well, despite being miscast, which is always a big telltale sign for me for those defensive linemen. So I think I would be excited about this one. And it is 3 rounds there. We only have 2 picks though, Jeremy. So there you go. There you have it. We end up taking the quarterback there and JJ. Maybe the Broncos will trade up from the end. These won't be the only picks the Broncos have by the time the draft rolls around, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the Broncos are more likely to take Bo Nix than JJ McCarthy. But we'll see. We'll see. An ideal situation is you wouldn't mind trading a 3 and a future pick to move up to 2 if Bo Nix is there at the top of the 2nd round.
It's certainly possible. I don't know if you saw Pro Football Focus's mock today from Trevor Sikkema. I think he finally heard my tweet where I'm like, I'm getting so tired of Bo Nix at 12 every single draft. Like, there's nothing else to talk about. He's the Broncos trading up to number 2 overall and taking Drake May.
That must have cost, and that cost Surtain and 3 firsts.
It didn't cost Surtain. It cost 3 firsts, 2 seconds, 2 thirds. Essentially the Trey Lance pick plus, and the Broncos are already at a negative with the trades. But if you think Drake May can be a Hall of Fame level quarterback, it's probably the move. And also coming out of the Senior Bowl, Daniel Jeremiah mentioned it yesterday, teams are not enthusiastic of the talent in the 2025 quarterback crop.
Which is going to make it even
more expensive and
going to make it even more expensive to get into the top 3.
But I think it also makes it so you are a little bit more okay giving up that future pick, because if it ends up being number 1 next year, I think Drake May is probably a better prospect than whichever quarterback is number 1 next season. So it's not the Bryce Young.
Said that Caleb Williams and Drake May are probably the best quarterback prospect. They'd be number 1 in each of the last years since Trevor Lawrence.
Yep. And probably 1 next year. We'll have to see how it plays out. Michael Commence says, great show today, Nick and Scott. Go Broncos. Go, Michael. We got to get out of here. I probably just got a text from the partner here saying, yep, we got to go. So appreciate everyone. Follow Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scott Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell, MHH. Also follow us at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, join us at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as the ticker says here underneath, please subscribe to our show, like our channel, and share on your social media platforms. Nick hates the obvious pick. It's Nick's. I don't like Nix at 12. If they end up taking him, I get it. I just don't see he doesn't hunt, Scott, and that kind of drives me nuts. It's a really fine line to walk with quarterback. You want somebody who protects the football, but also isn't a patsy and dumping the ball off at the first sign of pressure, manipulating the pocket, hanging tough in the pocket. And I see so much Derek Carr softness from Bo Nix in terms of being aggressive. I'm looking for somebody who protects the ball, but hunts. It's hard. That's the fine line, but I think it's easier to dial back than to dial up, and I think you might have to dial up Nix. Good luck.
It's a whole lot easier to put a bit in their mouth than a boot in their ass. That was an old Southern saying I heard when I was in my 20s.
Yep, and throwing with anticipation and throwing guys open over the middle of the field. Easier said than done. The best 2 in this class, and best 3 in that class, Scott, for that is the worst one's Michael Penix. The best 3 are probably May, Williams, and JJ McCarthy, honestly. So, we'll see. But appreciate everyone. We'll see how it goes. God, man, dark day again in Denver. But hey, man, 10 years from now, things will be different. Appreciate everyone. Have a good one. Go Broncos. Choose kindness and compassion. Talk to you later.